Hello and welcome to our very special series, London Eye, which is back. Over the next few days, I'll be trying to speak to some of the biggest European investors who run lots of money in India and ask them whether the mood on India is slowly beginning to turn after what's been a disastrous start to 2013. My guest today on the show is a big star of the hedge fund world, Honn, who runs the Children's Investment Fund. That's a $6 billion fund. But of course, he's best known in India for the huge run-ins that he's had with the government of India on Coal India. Chris, thank you very much for joining in. Well, you run a very successful hedge fund, but in India, everybody knows you as the man who's running a crusade against the government on Coal India on what you think is a very, very unfair pricing of coal. Where do things stand on that front right now?
Well, the government has not raised prices on coal in nearly 2 years, and the costs of the company have been escalating strongly, and as a result, with inflation, coal pricing is actually falling in real terms, and so there's been no progress at all on the coal pricing issue, and it remains a gigantic economic loss for the Indian people. Approximately $20 billion a year of lost profits, which should be going to the Indian people as the 90% shareholder of Coal India. And in our view, it's solely because politically connected companies to the Indian government are receiving fuel supply agreements at half market price or a third of market price for coal. And it's a system that encourages corruption, and because not everybody can get coal at half price, so obviously there's a massive incentive for companies to pay bribes in order to get FSA contracts, and as a result the companies that get them don't charge lower prices, they just extract monopoly and profit margins from the benefit of the cheap coal. And so there's really a lie that's being told to the Indian people that cheap coal benefits them. It doesn't benefit them at all. You know, if you price to market and the coal, the $20 billion of extra profits of Coal India could be distributed through to the poorest Indian people. 40% of the population has no access to electricity, and so the beneficiaries of cheap coal are not the poor people of India, but actually rich industrialists who are willing to pay bribes in order to get FSA coal at cheap prices.
And you're completely opposed to the signing of the fuel supply agreements with these private companies. It's ironic that many private companies...
No, we're happy for them to sign FSA contracts as long as the volumes make sense. And so I actually don't mind the contracts that have been signed, but they can't force the company to sell at discounts to market prices, which they don't. So the actual contracts that have been signed, I'm not opposed to it. The issue is not, do you guarantee some volume to customers? That's okay. The simple issue is that if the market price of coal is $70, you can't sell it for $25. In return for companies, paying a bribe. That's not right for India. And what's bizarre about the whole situation is that we, as foreigners entering India, are the only people shouting about this thing. You've had the Controller and Auditor General of India write a formal report saying that the whole coal block allocation process was flawed and corrupted. Very, very valuable coal blocks being given away for free to connected people to the Indian government. And the same point is true about FSA contracts. And we've asked the Controller and Auditor General to launch a review into why this is not also being auctioned. The Supreme Court of India has ruled that natural resources, which belong ultimately to the people of India, are best allocated through a transparent auction process, and so the whole pricing of FSA coal at giant discounts is actually persists because the scale of money involved is so giant, $20 billion a year, that it actually, it ultimately is big enough to finance the large political parties in their campaigns.
You think that's the reason why there is so much political interference? Because
Yes.
money is
Yes.
really changing
Yes.
hands?
Yes, absolutely, 100%. Anybody who you talk to in India understands that the whole coal industry is corrupted every level of the chain. The coal mafia get cheap coal, given free, that the whole large-scale theft of coal from Coal India is not clamped down on. They receive the highest quality coal, and lowest quality coal then goes to companies like NTPC, and it goes all the way down the chain. Why else should rich industrial companies receive Jindal Steel and all of these companies, for example, receive free coal blocks and coal at 70% discounts to market prices. It has no benefit at all to the poorest people of India.
Since you mentioned NTPC, you have some sympathy for them, the fact that they're unwilling to sign the FSA because of the quality of coal issues?
Yeah, I do have sympathy for them. One of the things that we've been pressing on our campaign, which you can see on Coal for India, number 4, india.com, is that the coal should be washed in India. It's essentially 40% of the coal that's sold in India by Coal India is full of ash and dirt and rocks, as pointed out by NTPC. And the company has been unbelievably slow and useless in implementing a coal washing program. Coal is washed in in the USA, it's washed in China in order to remove this giant proportion of ash and rocks. And it's very good for the environment, for the air quality of India, and it's a win-win-win. There's a regulation being put in place so that in the next 2 or 3 years, the majority of coal should be washed, but it's never enforced. The government of India doesn't enforce it, and even though NTPC is in favor of coal washing, as is all the other private sector power companies like Tata Power, we've talked to them. Coal India is in principle in favor of coal washing, and the Environment Ministry is in favor of coal washing. But it never happens because you have a board of Coal India and a CEO who view themselves as totally unaccountable to the wider base. They don't talk to shareholders, they don't consider themselves in any way, shape or form accountable to them. And this has to stop because it's such an important company in India. It is the linchpin of the economy, because power and coal are the linchpin, that the mismanagement on every way of every part of the operations, not just pricing of the coal, but the fact that they have failed to implement the coal washing program that they said they would, or enlarge it in order to meet the regulatory requirements, is just another sort of economic crime being put on the Indian people.
You've been stonewalled for many months now. I've been following your efforts to try and do
That's
something
correct.
about it, but are you really hopeful, or at some point you get frustrated and say, I give up, I'm a shareholder, I'm going to sell my shares down of Coal India?
I think we will, whatever shareholding we hold, we're going to go the distance on the litigation. I think the board of Coal India has grossly failed both shareholders and the people of India. And the litigation that we have against the board of Coal India begins in June or July this year. And they have personal liability for the damage that's been caused, the economic loss to shareholders and the people of India. And if we win, we'll bankrupt them personally. And if they leave the board, the liability legally doesn't go away. And I think that there is some understanding now of the board members that they are in deep trouble. And so that lawsuit, there's no board in any developed world company can sell their product cheaply at half market prices to friends of the controlling shareholder. It's called a related party transaction, and it's illegal. And And so there has to be ultimately the best. There's two ways we can win here. One is through litigation. Probably the best opportunity is against the board, and we won't give up on that. And the second is for the Indian people to wake up and realize that the damage of Coal India is not just economic, but also environmental. And essentially, by not pricing coal to market, there is an overconsumption of coal in India. Okay, it's the only fuel that you rely on. Okay, you know, why in other countries is there a greater diversity of fuel sources, renewables and hydro and for example in natural gas, whereas India it's 75% coal. The answer is because they've priced coal at way below prices, and that causes climate change in India. It causes long-term drought, drying out of the soil, massive water shortages, air quality pollution. And so the biggest issue, actually is not the $250 billion of value lost to the Indian people of pricing coal, but the environmental impact of this policy. And ultimately, the only way this will change, just like corruption, this is ultimately the source of the problem, is corruption, is for the Indian people to protest and to say enough. The only way you can avoid bribery coming into a system which prices a product below market allocated by the government is to price it through an auction. The Supreme Court has ruled that. Okay, it's common sense that a system giving away a product for half price on a non-transparent, non-auction system is going to be prone to corruption. Sure. Obvious, and yet the Indian people let it persist. The government lets it persist, and the reason is every political party has benefited from this. Whoever gets into power benefits from the money from the coal industry. And given the poverty of India, it's a huge, the scale of the money involved is so large, that's why the government fights it. And so we do need, that's why I'm on your TV show today, is to keep making the argument, and I believe persistence will be persistent, and irrespective of whatever shareholding we have, I think we will continue this because it has, it's a morally wrong system.
A quick break. We are back with London Eye, Honn of the Children's Investment Fund after this very short break.